Yeah, as you know, I make videos on prehistory and mud fossils, but this is something that I kind of keep to myself. But I'm just going to show you a few images, quite a few, and maybe a video, and it's to do with the fact that maybe, or it seems like that we've probably been lied to, like I keep saying about everything, but like I said on that video, we've all seen this. I live in England and I see this in London and all the major cities. In fact, I know it's in France. This is St. Petersburg. It's everywhere. Even the original cities in Japan, which were no different to European cities actually, which have since been ripped down for some reason, right? But these windows, they didn't just build like this, I can tell you, right? You don't just build something like this with windows here, right? So then it can get flooded and rain come in. These structures have been buried, and sometimes more than, higher than half of the level that they originally were, and even bridges, right, that just don't seem the right height, yeah, that are completely buried. But I'll just show you some images and I'll show you what I mean. Like this one, yeah, I'm just, you've seen this yourself, and then they get remodified, like that's been knocked through, okay. This type of thing, if you go out in any major city, you will see it yourself. And what I'm getting at, it seems like that things have completely started again. We've just repopulated. We've repopulated the land and rebuilt and painted and plastered over what was left after this event is what I'm talking about. There's stuff like this all over. Don't be thinking that for some reason so-called primitive people have just come and just dug down, right, all the way down here and built this for it to get flooded. If you're thinking that, you need to think again. It's ridiculous, but that's what mainstream archaeology will tell you. And I'm saying, no, it's not. This is an entire city that runs under these fields, just like anywhere else on the world, for miles. These are cities underground, just like all the cities, these so-called underground cities, yeah, in Turkey. They were above ground at one time. All of them were. Right? And Rome, I touched on this before, Rome was built over the top of a so-called star fort, yes, which are pre-human structures, okay? There can't have been giants that built these things, because they weren't, they're not much different to brick built structures to how we build, but they're extremely advanced, right, knowledge of geometry and all sorts, and organization in how these things were built. And even here, I'll show you more images on this, but a third of them have all been wiped out by water. Again, just because these are wiped out by water doesn't mean that they were destroyed in the flood. It just means that the later flood wiped much of these earlier structures out, yeah? And then humans have come and populated many of them, right? But they're in every single country on Earth. Every single country on Earth. This is Rome, right? And you can clearly see that there's a star fort there, and it's built over the top of a star fort. Say fort, they're not forts, okay? I don't know what they were, probably something to do with energy and the generation of frequency, okay? But these are built over. That's an early plan of Rome and St. Petersburg even. Yeah, all the major cities, all of them, are all built over these types of structures, right? You know, because most structures, right, were all built from rubble, like I keep getting on about, you know. They're all built from rubble, from this kind of stuff being smashed down, yeah? Why would you go and quarry if you didn't have technology like we didn't when we first got put here? We were building from rubble, from these things. This is Rome, right? And it's obvious that there's an older structure that's buried mainly underground, right? But they've been building from rubble from these structures because that's what this is. And the Romans built from brick and clay and inferior concrete, like I've shown you before. They weren't able to move anything megalithic, and they did not have technology to cut through hard stone or anything like that. The other thing I want to point out, this is the Last Supper, obviously, right? And I want you to look at how degraded this painting is, yeah? And it's been looked after. You know, they're trying to stop it from falling apart anymore. They keep, you know, restoring it and painting over it with various things. But, well, that's a close-up of an area. But then I want you to compare that type of painting, yeah, to this stuff, yeah, and then I want you to work out why does this look in better condition, like most of these Egyptian paintings do, right, than a lot of European paintings, okay? And again, this is not the work of technologically advanced people, is it? No, it's not. This is not that old, right? And if you're thinking, well, it's inside a tomb, none of it's a tomb for one thing. I'll get into that later. But either way, these places are damp, right? And I'm going to prove that all these are actually knocked out of mud, clay, when all this stuff was buried. That's why they were able to tunnel these things out, because it's done in clay. So all this would get damp, yeah, and all this would fall off. This stuff is not that old, people. A bit like these coins, you know. I find coins from only a few decades old, a few, 100 years old, and they don't look much different to this. This is St. Petersburg, and this is what I was showing you. This is across every single major city across the world. I'll show you a video shortly. And another question I'm asking, right, is these, I think these were actually the last humanoids to be wiped out on this earth, and then, they were replaced by us, okay? These are across the whole world. But these aren't that old, are they? I don't care where they've been buried, in sand or in a box. If they've still got skin over their bones and it's still rotting away, these things are not that old. I don't care where they've been buried, people, and what conditions they're in. These are not that old. Certainly not thousands of years. Because where I'm getting is that the so-called Dark Ages is bullshit, right? They're talking about 1,000 years of missing history, yeah? Well, I'm saying that history hasn't been missing. I'm saying that that's where humans started their history. It's probably about 800, no more than 1,000 years ago, we've been here. This stuff is not that old, I'm telling you. Either the Dark Ages are complete bullshit and our history started around 800 years ago, or this was the Dark Ages after this human event, and then time stopped for 1,000 years, and then we picked up where we left off and replastered and repainted these places, yeah, which is just a few hundred years ago, a couple of 100 years ago only.